We who believe in the sacred freedom to vote will make sure every American has the ability to cast their ballot and have it counted.
Joe Biden has dropped out of the race, endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, and now Harris has secured enough support from delegates to become the Democratic Party's presumptive presidential nominee. At Democracy Docket, our key focus is reporting on the efforts to increase or restrict access to the ballot and efforts to protect or dismantle our democracy. As such, we look closely at the voting rights records of major candidates. So let's go through Vice President Kamala Harris's record on voting rights and democracy during her tenure in the Biden administration and her career as a senator. During her time as vice president, Harris has taken the lead on the White House's efforts to protect voting rights.
We will fight to safeguard our democracy. We will fight to secure our most fundamental freedom, the freedom to vote.
When she took the office of vice president, the New York Times reported that Harris herself asked President Biden if she could be the one to take the lead on the issue of voting rights.
To signify the importance of our efforts, today I'm asking Vice President Harris to help these efforts and lead them among her many other responsibilities.
As a U.S. Senator from California, Harris co-sponsored the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, a landmark piece of legislation that would revitalize the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and provide legal tools for voters to fight discriminatory voting laws and electoral districts. The bill passed the House, but Senate Republicans ultimately blocked the bill from even reaching debate.
And it is a shame that nearly every Republican in the United States Senate refused to even allow a debate on this issue.
Over the past 4 years, Harris has called on Congress countless times to prioritize passing this crucial legislation, along with the Freedom to Vote Act, which would establish minimum standards for early and mail-in voting nationwide. As Vice President, Harris has met with Native American voters and voters with disabilities several times from 2021 to 2023 to discuss how to break down their specific barriers to voting and the White House's efforts to achieve this goal. This includes an event in March of 2022 to commemorate the first anniversary of President Biden's executive order on promoting access to voting, which increased voter registration opportunities at federal agencies and expanded the ways voters can obtain election information. During her remarks, Harris said that it will continue to take an all-hands-on-deck approach to protect our democracy. Together, with your help, I know we can safeguard and strengthen the freedom to vote for generations to come. In September 2023, she launched the nationwide Fight for Our Freedoms College Tour, where she traveled to college campuses across the country to mobilize students to fight for their rights, including the right to vote.
Let's understand that it is wrong that any elected official would try to choose who can vote for them when it should be the voter who chooses who represents them. Look, when we're talking about voting, it's critically important. They say that young people won't vote. They try to convince you that your vote doesn't matter. And know that that is just not true. It is part of the voice that you exercise every day, and it is critically important.
In January of this year, she hosted an event to discuss the voter suppression efforts in Georgia.
When we look at the state of Georgia, in many ways it is ground zero on this issue, both in terms of Georgia's history of fighting for the right of people to express their dreams and goals for their country through the exercise of their right to vote. Georgia, of course, the home of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the home of John Lewis, of Andy Young, and, of course, many of the leaders who are at this table.
In February, she outlined the White House's four-part strategy to protect voting rights, describing voting as a fundamental freedom that unlocks all other freedoms. This strategy including instructing federal agencies to inform Americans how to vote, allowing students to be paid to be poll workers and register voters through federal work study, creating the Election Threats Task Force to train officials on protecting election workers and fighting voter suppression laws in court via the U.S. Department of Justice. As a U.S. Senator, Harris introduced the Vote Safe Act in May of 2020 to make it easier and more accessible for voters to safely cast their ballot amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Among its provisions, the bill proposed requiring states to allow every voter the ability to vote by mail without having a qualifying excuse to do so, mandate an early in-person voting period of at least 20 days and provide extra funding for states to increase voting safety and accessibility. At the time, Harris explained that the bill focused on specifically aiding communities that have historically struggled with access to the ballot box. Her statement said, "As our country combats COVID-19, we're also in the middle of an election year. It is critical that we meet voters where they are and ensure that all forms of voting are safe and accessible." The bill ended up stalling in the then Republican-controlled Senate. Now, as the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee, I would expect Vice President Kamala Harris to continue making fighting for voting rights a key tenet of her platform. Thanks for watching Democracy Docket. If you want to stay up to date on the latest voting and election news, make sure to subscribe to our newsletters. And if you want to support our work, consider becoming a member. You can click the link right here on the screen or in the description of this video. I'm Sophie, and I'll see you next time.